Hades strode through the desolate halls of Mount Olympus. All the court had departed, and the skies were a deep blue, fading into black. Stars like pinpricks in a thick velvet, with only a candle behind it, light that barely shone through. His footsteps echoed alone on the stone floors as he walked the corridors, away from the grand halls and resplendent throne room, toward the private chambers. He weaved through the passages until he was in the heart of the castle, stood before the imposing doors to the king's private rooms. He knocked 3 times and waited.
Enter.
A booming voice called out, and Hades took a deep breath before opening the doors. Zeus had his back to the door, but the missive that Hades had sent via Hermes sat on the table between them. 2 goblets were already set beside it, golden and glittering in the low candlelight. Hades cracked a smile as he saw his brother. Zeus turned and beamed a wide smile back, all teeth, and a flash of the old Zeus, young and covered in mud, shot in the mind of Hades. Zeus brought the jug to the table and filled each cup with ambrosia. He handed 1 chalice to Hades and grasped his own while smoothly sitting down in one swift motion. The hardness of Hades softened in the presence of his brother, but he kept up the typical decorum.
My lord.
But Zeus interrupted.
My lord. Come, Hades. No need for such formalities. It is just us here. Sit, brother. Drink before you speak. You are as stiff as stone. Relax. And let us speak as we once did.
Hades took the glass with a nod, his shoulders relaxing just a little as he collapsed into a chair. He ran a hand through his wild hair and drank down his cup in one, numbing himself from the current issues of the underworld, which were ongoing, and without solution, cataclysmic. Zeus sipped from his seat beside Hades, the ghost of a smile still on his face. Hades saw the weariness in his brother's bright eyes. The lord of the underworld dragged a hand over his face and exhaled heavily as he set his empty cup back.
There is a problem.
Zeus interrupted again, hoping to cheer his sullen brother.
Isn't there always? The problems that ail us now are but twigs compared with the war. Leading is better than scraping to live, eh?
Hades let out a chuckle at that. He thought at least the war was simpler, clear compared to the complexity of ruling, never knowing truly which choice is right.
Never wrong, brother. But this is serious, and I need more input. 2 minds are greater than one. You are wise beyond our years, and I trust you above all.
Zeus and Hades shared a weary look, but Zeus nodded solemnly and leant forward, eager to help.
A problem shared is a problem halved. Tell me what troubles you. As you said, I am wise above all and can fix any issue. That is why you come to your king with such flattery, eh?
Hades snorted and rolled his eyes at his sibling.
Well, my king, would you like to hear how Kronos devised mortals were to be judged? How he thought the souls should be sorted?
Zeus took a deep breath at the thought of his father and all the choices in his reign. Still webs he was in the process of untangling.
No, skip the problem. We shall hear of father's old plans when we are more drunk. For I'm sure they are absurd.
Hades leant back himself, understanding the old wound but frustrated. How were they to fix a problem when he could not discuss the core? He would try it Zeus's way. He poured another cup and began to think of how to put it, how to phrase it to get Zeus to give him the answers he truly wanted. Zeus pushed his empty chalice forward, and Hades filled his too.
I propose that we hold judgments in the underworld after death, for they are currently held before. Rather than but one judge, I intend 3 mortal men to judge the souls. Of course, they must be dead, to avoid the issues of bribery, bargaining, and other cheating methods. It must be fair and true above all. I believe the souls must be stripped of mortal possessions and clothes, even their very bodies before judgment.
Zeus's eyebrows furrowed, and he asked,
Their flesh? Why strip them of that?
Hades smiled. He was slipping in the issues of the old system, and now the dialogue would benefit them both. No mention of Kronos, while discussing and troubleshooting the issues of his structure. For he had set up a judgment before death, a single judge, and Hades saw all the faults from a mile away.
Anonymity, for fame, renown, fine clothes and jewels can all colour the opinions of a judge, with character testimonies easily bought and lied about. Even a pretty face can hide the sins of the soul beneath. Beauty and money, lies and bribery, all are tools and weapons in this way. Souls could too easily feign good heart and good character, all to hide their deceits. When judging the actions of a life and hearing of an individual, it is just another distraction. Even we fall for beauty, eh, brother? Oh, yes indeed, brother. I see the benefits of your proposed plans. 3 heads are better than 1. It is how we won over father, no? I must say it seems you have already thought this through and come up with a good solution. I give my blessing if that is what you require. But is that all?
Zeus leant back. He finished his cup and poured again, preparing for the worst of the news. Hades knew with the ambrosia drunk and the reference to their father. He was ready to hear it plain.
I have a bare foundation for a plan. There are many details I have yet to sort, hence my coming tonight. But the problem spreads further. We already have souls that have been misjudged. The more we continue to plot and do not act, the more fool the judge and get placed wrongly in my realm. It is important that we act fast, but we must also choose wisely. 3 are better than 1, but it is no guarantee for success. The judges themselves must be above the common good soul. But brother, I have no idea who could do it.
Zeus set his empty chalice down. He closed his eyes, and Hades could feel his vision was elsewhere. His consciousness sifting through the mortals, like scanning a flickering file of faces. Searching through those who have lived, those that will live, and those that are yet to die. With their power, they could bring the consciousness of any they would need, no matter if the mortal had not even been born yet. Time is often an odd thing for the gods and their power. Even the underworld itself does not follow the same linear structure to that of earth and life. Zeus's eyes snapped open. A flicker of gold shone for a moment from his irises. It faded away as he chuckled and smiled to Hades.
I know just the men. Aeacus, Rhadamanthus, and Minos. They will judge the souls, those already sorted, and those to come.
Hades leant back slowly, but was wide-eyed, his confusion and shock evident for a moment, before he restrained his expression. He decided then not to let this matter settle until he was satisfied, until Hades felt he could trust the would-be judges himself. He knew to be careful with his words. but the ambrosia had let his decorum slip.
Your sons? But they have not yet to live, nor die. It does not matter, brother. Time is easily bent by me now. When they pass on, we shall merely shunt their souls back an eon or two. They will have, and always will be, our eternal judges of the dead.
Hades nodded, leaning back, but there was still hesitation evident. His body stiff, his hands clenched around the arm of his seat.
My lord, I mean no disrespect, but why your sons? Why must every judge be your son? Hades, call me Zeus. You have earned that right, even if you do not trust my judgment as you say.
Hades' eyes dropped at that, but he felt a hand on his shoulder, warm and comforting.
It is not that I do not trust you, Zeus. It is that I must trust them. In truth, I know not much of their lives to come. My focus is entirely on the dead in my realm. I know you as a father will favor your sons, but I cannot make this choice without careful consideration. This is my realm. I must choose. I trust your judgment, but a mishap here could lead to catastrophic consequences. I must be sure. So enlighten me, brother. Why them?
Zeus put the chalices of ambrosia away before he settled back in his seat. He wanted to show Hades he was not the brash child anymore. He had grown, matured, and become a rightful king. But he was not unreasonable.
I understand your hesitation, Hades, but I have considered. Let me explain to you the full lives of my mortal sons, and you will come to see and understand why they are the perfect men for the job. I may be ruler of the skies and earth, but you rule the dead and all it encompasses. You're right. It is your choice. First, my son born of the nymph Aegina, the daughter of a river god. She named our son for his grandfather, Aeacus. He and the rest of her family disapproved of my love of Aegina. To keep her safe, I flew her to her own island where she birthed our son. There he was raised and learned much about the way of the world. And Aeacus spent some time traveling in his early adulthood. He learned by observing all the variety of people around him, low and high, rich and poor. He even met our brother, Poseidon. Aeacus offered a helping hand to build the walls of Troy before he returned to Aegina and the island. He had grown in his worship of the gods. He went on to rule the people of the island, and he preached our name. It was more than just worship, though. He was virtuous and just. Believe not my words, but the praise of mankind, the noble deeds he did. As ruler of Aegina and leader of men, he grew to be known for his wise judgment, but Hera found the boy and his mother, the people of their island. She sent a thick cloud that covered their whole land. Plague killed them off, except Aegina and Aeacus. Hera spared them to watch them suffer the loss of everyone they knew. He wept for each of them and dug their graves himself. He performed the rites and rituals himself, using what little coin they had for the passage of their fallen people. Aeacus is a kind soul, and I could not leave them all alone. After Hera's plagues were swept away, and I had earned her favor back some, I snuck to the island of Aegina myself. Aeacus deserved companions, and so I transformed the ants of the island into men. Across their land, men, women, and children sprouted from the soils. A new people were born, the Myrmidons. Aeacus rose to the challenge. he guided and taught his new people all he knew. He became a natural leader, protecting, teaching, and showing by example. The Myrmidons flourished under the watchful eye of Aeacus. They grew to be more than just men, some of the very best of men. His people were treated so well, debates and strife were all settled with fairness. They became some of the most loyal peoples, and word of their pious ruler spread. Across the lands and seas, others from different lands came to see him. For you must see, brother, he had to teach the people that were once ants how to be human. He learned all of the raw emotions, different reactions, and the depths of man. They learned quickly, so he had to learn faster. Aeacus's gentle hand and patience was always present, and other lands began to seek the counsel of Aeacus. All who came seeking justice were left satisfied, for Aeacus could see the liars from the honest, the displays of crocodile tears over genuine pleas. Do you recall the drought?
Hades shrugged his shoulders, lost in piecing the picture of Aeacus together to remember exact events like that.
It was sent as punishment for murder. A prophecy that the oracle of Delphi was given by Apollo decreed that the drought would not cease without the prayers of Aeacus to the gods. Of course, the loyal boy prayed, and the droughts were reversed.
Zeus looked to Hades, sure that his words had started to sway his brother. Then he saw what Zeus saw. Hades, however, held his gaze and sighed once more.
Aeacus is the son that built a temple in your honor for answering his prayers. The temple of Zeus on Mount Penhelion, on Aegina, if I recall correctly, my king?
Hades wished to say it outright. Aeacus was favored by Zeus. But he did not see what for yet. He could not bend to evidence that Zeus himself had made happen. Zeus had stopped the drought, not Aeacus. The king saw meaning in his brethren's words, but continued.
Aeacus also built a sanctuary called the Aeacium, a square temple for worship. But faith be not the only reason why. You cannot deny his patience, his good judgment, and level head. It can be seen in the way he dealt with his treacherous sons. Aeacus with his wife, Queen Endias, had 2 sons, Telamon and Peleus. But with his father's blood, he did inherit my appetite. He pursued Sanse, a Nereid, and she bore Phobos. Aeacus treated his sons as equals, loving them all fiercely. Yet did his firstborn boys have jealousy grow for their half-brother. Telamon and Peleus lured Phoebus away from a festival. When all were drunk and the night was dark, they took him down a winding forest path. There they slaughtered their kin, stuck him like a boar on a hunt. He squealed like one too, until they slit his throat. They ripped his vocal cords out with their hands and made a mess of his body. They meant to stage a wild boar attack to cover their kinslaying, but not well enough. When their father found what they had done, he had them brought before him and asked for the truth from their very mouths. Only lies came out with every filthy word, like a knife driven further into him. Aeacus was shattered, as anyone would be. To lose a child is torture enough, but to lose them to your own flesh. The realization that their child was killed by their brother, who was supposed to protect them. He had every right to execute them for such barbarity. But Aeacus would not succumb to anger. He did not let his roaring emotions influence his judgment. With his years of wisdom, he knew they could not go unpunished. Yet he would not fall to their vile level, and so he exiled them from their homelands, stripped of their family name and ties, but free to live. perhaps so they could one day see the crime of their own actions and journey to seek redemption. Aeacus has seen both the highest good and lowest depravity in the hearts of man, even in his own sons. Many might not punish kin, or be driven to kill in revenge, but he stood firm. He knew in his being what was right and what was fair. Aeacus could not be swayed. And I say, who could make a better judge than he?
Hades nodded and sat back, absorbed by the life of Aeacus. A smirk appeared on his face.
Level-headed, wise and impartial to his own sons? I see now, brother, why you recommend this king for such a role as judge. He will remain steadfast. I approve, and I admire the qualities in both the man and the father. I am glad to see it. Tell me of Rhadamanthus, brother. I recall he had skills in law-making, but what of the rest of his life? What of his character?
Zeus broke out into a grin. He was used to fitting into his role as king. He wore it quite well. But he had missed Hades. And this, a quiet night with his brother, like old times under the stars. They would talk battle strategy, and here they were once more. Zeus began again, gesturing with his arms as he spoke, gladdened to be a brother rather than a king.
His reputation precedes him. My son Rhadamanthus was a lawmaker on Crete, one of the children of Eurypyle, the princess.
Hades snapped his fingers, pointing to Zeus with a chuckle.
The bull? She was a princess you wooed as a bull and whisked off, if I remember now.
Zeus and Hades shared a laugh then, and Hades stood to fetch the chalices once more. Hades poured more ambrosia to deal with the idea of Zeus transformed as a white bull, and Zeus continued as he took his cup, and his brother sat back down.
After my loving courtship with the princess Europa, she bore me 3 sons, Rhadamanthus, Sarpedon, and Minos. To protect my love from my wife, I took her to Crete. There she married King Asterion to hide them further. As my boys grew, Rhadamanthus was eager to learn all he could, tutored by the finest mortal minds, and obscured of the world around him. It was too chaotic, too full of callous people that let malice and cruelty rule their actions. No rules, order, or consequence. He decreed the people should swear oaths on animals, which enacted some change, for people cared more for their oaths when linked with the lives of animals. Another law passed by Rhadamanthus was that a person should not be liable for actions taken in self-defense, if the other party committed violence first. He brought much order to the city. With his wise mind and strong moral code, the people of his city admired him. Dutiful, he served his stepfather, and thought one day to help his brother Minos rule, to continue his role and work beside him, serving the people. Yet when the old king, their stepfather, Asterion, fell ill and passed on, Minos turned on his brothers. He exiled Rhadamanthus and Sarpedon from their home. Minos may have feared the love his brothers had garnered. Even so, Rhadamanthus wanted to fight for his place, but he could never raise a hand to his kin. Through the betrayal, he remained loyal to his core principles. The peace of the city was far more important. He could not break the order and make a war of his home. For factions of them would fight for each brother if pushed. He could have fought for a claim. Rhadamanthus knew this, but he could not throw the order away for his own personal revenge. No, he left with his head held high, leaving his brothers to rule over the people of Crete. He fled to Boeotia, where he did not wallow, and Rhadamanthus built a city of his own. Instead of inheriting, he built his own from the ground up. It took time, but with the sound foundation set, he grew the city into a thriving one. His dedication and hard work paid off, and all those years of policies and politicking benefited his own new people. In his travels from his homeland, he had seen the ways that cities had been set to benefit the top strata, but not their people. How they could slip and falter even more when together than alone. How collectives or rules can manipulate the world. The will of an individual that twists things for their own gain. At times, how the world can push a person to limits they could not fathom alone. Rhadamanthus sees what Aeacus may not, the wider picture, the grand scope, and all that might affect it. How it can all come together. But Rhadamanthus does not always understand the men themselves. Law and words far more his forte. Rhadamanthus even trained and tutored his stepson, another son of mine, from the widow Amphitryon, Hercules.
Hades sat forward but nodded at his brother's words, yet his shoulders were tense. His breath was a little tight as he answered.
Rhadamanthus is understandable. His experience with law, cities, and his sense of justice, it fits well. I did not doubt your choice in him, but what of Minos? To place Minos as a judge, with his own lack of judgment evident with the Minotaur event, would it be wise to trust such a man? Would his exiled brother, Rhadamanthus, even work with his old brother? I mean no disrespect, my king, but of all three of these sons, you favour Minos above all. Although he brought legal justice, events have shown he is not of sound judgment. I see no glaring faults with Aeacus nor Rhadamanthus. They may be the finest judges, but I do not trust Minos. You cannot let your personal investment in him blind you to his faults. Did he not disrespect and anger our brother Poseidon, thinking himself above the very gods?
Zeus paused and then rose from his chair. He slowly paced to the window to look out upon the balcony. He took a deep breath and turned back to Hades and the light of the room. Zeus leant on the stone and began again.
I do not deny that Minos is the son I was closest to. I would appear to him and teach him from my own tongue, tell him how to create stability, order, guide him in his teachings. Yet his choices are riddled with triumph and defeat, moral and immoral, wise and just in some ways, deceitful, self-serving and callous in others. He, of all three candidates I have offered, knows of mistakes, missteps, and intent. To make a well-meaning mistake, and knowing what is right, but doing it by choice.
Hades rose from his own seat and joined his brother by the balcony, looking onto the horizon with his own eyes. The dark skies were clear, but no moon shone bright that night. Even Selene had taken her leave of their talk. Hades said nothing, and Zeus began again.
Minos was born to the same mother, Europa, the same father and stepfather as Rhadamanthus. For some of his upbringing, Minos and Rhadamanthus were much alike, interest in religion, law, and leadership. Where Rhadamanthus stayed in Crete studying laws of different lands and kingdoms, delighted to be wrapped up in the economics of trade, diplomacy, and the justice systems of each, Minos had a restlessness. His blood hotter and itching to explore the world, make his mark. I saw myself in him. The brash bravery of my youth, when I thought to save the world. He travelled some in youth, learning to fight and seeing the capabilities of ships and sea travel. It inspired him. Imagine armies with the speed of sea travel, able to reach further even faster. He brought these seeds of ideas back to Crete, where through the years he cultivated them. Every 9 years I would see him, advising him on laws which would best suit, helping him bring order to the mess of mankind that had been made from Prometheus, humankind made worse with the gifts of Pandora. I wish to make some amends, I suppose. They need our guidance, brother. I thought Minos to be a perfect way to help. Together, we could bring order and justice to humanity. Perhaps I put too much on the boy, or it is just his nature. He is only human, yet I cannot deny the mistakes he made in life. I fear his desperation for wise minds and consequent capture of such men was part of his ways to help our plans. But by gathering and keeping the brightest minds, Polyides and Daedalus, it was a twisted way to further my plan for order. Peace by any means necessary. You wax poetic, brother. Tell me of his life plain, his actions laid plain. I will see if he is fit for the role. I fear you may be too close to him. Aye, that is a fair statement, brother. After being raised in Crete, he matured and had a family with his wife, Pasiphae, extending the family line, securing his heirs. He inherited the kingdom from Asterius, though the popularity of his brothers caused him to drive them out in fear, a decision he would come to regret when old age hit, but his travels before becoming king influenced his mind, the treachery of those around, so he banished his brothers, for they were more loved and known than he. Their names were cemented in the city amongst his people. Fear clouded his mind, the paranoia of our blood, or his own experience, colouring his mind. It is hard to say. Perhaps he thought to be sparing more harm by sending them away. Before any inkling of uprising or plotting began, he vied for the throne, claimed his sovereignty was from the gods themselves, and he prayed over and over to each god. But when he prayed to our brother Poseidon and promised to sacrifice a bull should he send one from the oceans as his sign, Poseidon loved the idea of a beautiful bull all for himself. He sent that stunning white stud from the ocean foams, but the beauty of the beast was too much. His muscles perfect, coat shining in the light, and such strength. Minos could not resist keeping such a prize for himself, so he sacrificed another. And this angered Poseidon, and so he sent a lust over Minos' wife, Pasiphae. For the bull, she became obsessed with it. But Minos took no notice, far too busy. To strengthen his position, before he set to change the world around him, he massed the first navy, training soldiers from sailors and creating ships ready for battle. With this force, he hoped to subdue all that war without purpose. The senseless bloodshed would come to a stop by his hand before it could ever begin. A deterrent and an enforcement. Soon, Minos was hailed as a hero, commander of a great army and leader of a thriving city. But my teachings, my advice and warnings of the dangers that might come led him to paranoia. Instead of merely arming him, as I had hoped, warning him against all that could ruin his city, he grew more judgmental of mankind, believing in their worst natures. He fought to secure himself and show the world that he was worthy. At first, it appeared as just caution. A cautious and careful king is often a good one. And so he settled into ruling. His wife, Pasiphae, a child of Helios, of the sun, and Perse, she fed into his paranoia, looking down upon the mortal men. They bore children and heirs to continue the line. Acalius, Androgeus, Ariadne, Catrius, Deucalion, Glaucus, Phaedra, and Xenodice. But Minos, too, has many appetites, much like me, and fathered many more. yet he loved them dearly. When Glaucus was a baby.
Hades sighed and turned toward the horizon. Zeus clearly saw he had lost him and stopped his speech. Hades crossed his arms and Zeus turned from the window with a huff. He stalked back into the room and turned on his heel as Hades slinked behind him.
You think it not relevant? All a man's life will add up to the final sum.
Hades uncrossed his arms.
I know that is true, but many mortals love their children. It does not change their character. It does not change their actions, nor their effect on the world. Tell me things that pertain to what is at stake, brother. What of the Minotaur? The children of Athens died by his command. So what say you?
Hades huffed, and Zeus knew he had a point. But he did not waver. He was not deterred. He knew his choice was right. Hades just did not see it yet.
The Minotaur is a long and twisting tale, brother, but it is a key to understanding Minos. And you are right. I was dancing around it, hoping to highlight his good qualities, but it is his experience with bad choices that makes me wish to choose him. Pasiphae's obsession with the bull grew, and she ordered the artisan, Daedalus, to craft her a replica cow, so she might observe the bull up close. But Minos was much too distracted. With his son, Androgus, he was famous as a great athlete and winner of the Panathenaic Games, but his skills also brought the envy of his competitors. King Aeacus of Athens sent him to a marathon. Lured by the race, he was brought there, but then tricked, slaughtered by a raging bull, for the king and the men had advised to release it onto the track. There it charged, and all competitors pushed Androgeus into its path. He was trampled on the racetrack. Androgeus's blood painted the field, and his heart stopped before the last lap was finished. This grief drove Minos to dark depths. When his wife became pregnant, he wanted to rejoice. But the creature she bore, a monstrous thing, half man and half bull, a tiny pink flesh body with the head of a cow, covered with fur and pitch-black eyes. Hope was gone from his perception then. Minos took his army and his navy to seek revenge for his son, taking his anger out on the world. And he journeyed to King Aeacus. He stopped to camp at Megara, a city between Crete and Athens. As he and his men stopped to rest, they heard rumors of the local king, Nisos, the crimson-headed king, and a brother of Aeacus. Minos sieged the city then, determined to hurt any who associated with the man who killed his son. But Nisos himself could not die, nor could his city be won, for he had a secret. Nisos had a purple lock of hair beneath his ginger mane, and so long that it was never cut, he would live and hold his city, as per the magic that resided in it. But with the love of Scylla, Minos snuck into his chamber and shaved him clean, cut him down, and took the city. For the crime of betrayal, he sentenced Scylla to death. A twisted justice, yet it taught so many not to follow suit. Minos' grief and rage were overwhelming all his faculties. He wanted to inflict pain and hurt, enough to make his own disappear. But he learned. When he arrived at Athens, he prayed to me, sacrificed and performed the rituals, begged the gods to bring plagues and punishments down on Aeacus and his city. Minos knew it would hurt innocents, yet he did it anyway. He did it because he wanted it. But his own grief blinded him, and then the devastation he wished for came. When he saw the realities of it, the men, women and children starved, diseased and dying, bodies piled up, and it felt like justice for a moment. But then that faded. Aeacus bent to Minos, begging for any way to spare them. To save them from the torment he had inflicted upon them all, Minos demanded the lives of his people, 7 girls and 7 boys, each of 9 years. The oracle that Aeacus spoke to decreed he was to give anything Minos asked for, and the oracle Minos consulted gave him instructions for his monstrous stepson. The Minotaur could not be killed, so he sought a solution, a way to satisfy the beast's bloodlust as the oracle had ordered. He found a way to deal with both issues. 2 birds with 1 stone. Tactful. But Minos had his fill of revenge then, yet it was for the greater good. He thought he could lie to himself. All that suffering and all that pain, the dead he left behind in Athens and the Athenian children he led to their graves. He fell backwards into a wall. What was he to do? So Minos went home to Crete, his hot fire snuffed out by the cold waters of realization. It was all futile. His son was already dead. Nothing he had done or could do would bring him back. He had to live with his choices then, all the consequences that came with each one. And the long march home, he had to contemplate what he had done. He tried to forget, to ignore it, justify it all, and he did for a long time. But the guilt, the remorse, it all caught up with him. He could not run for long. Minos kept his wise men close and ordered the construction of the labyrinth when he returned home, hoping to hold the evil he had brought on it at bay. Rhadamanthus, Aeacus, they are good men, wise and just, yet they do not know what lives in the hearts of those that choose to do evil. Minos had acted with none but himself in mind before. He had made the wrong choices, lived selfishly, sought fame and fortune, acted rashly and cruelly. Even so, he had come to no regret. He can see a man deluding himself and know the difference between him and a truly remorseful soul. Brother, you said these judges will evaluate every human soul, all of them. Aeacus and Rhadamanthus will judge. But what if conflict should arise? What if the two are unable to make a ruling? Any arguments may be settled by Minos. He shall have the final ruling. When Rhadamanthus and Aeacus face the darkest of souls, how are they to know the irredeemable from the redeemable? Minos will be their way, for yes, he has done some callous and vicious things, but he knows the minds of the twisted. Minos will be able to tell the difference between a soul that made some bad choices, but lived their life in remorse, compared to those who do not regret an ounce of pain they enjoyed bringing, those who have wrought as much horror to the world as possible. When liars are so well honed in their craft, hoodwink any who come before them, you must institute a liar. They know the tricks, and Minos can see the true remorse from the fake platitudes. All will try to argue, but only Minos will be able to see. He has felt true remorse, and shall act as a magnificent judge, should you choose to appoint him. Brother, I understand now why you advised Minos. You are not wrong. Aeacus and Rhadamanthus are good men, and may have blind spots where your Minos may not. I feared your judgment might be lacking, I admit, and I will take my own time to judge the matter finally. But I believe you may be right. I need time to think, but I thank you, Zeus, for all your help in this matter.
Hades stood then, but Zeus stood too, and blocked his path. There was something in his eyes as Hades tried to leave. A wish, a want for this to continue. Hades wanted to get on with the work at hand, to right the wrong that had been done. but he glided to the table that held the glasses and chalices, and brought back another jug of ambrosia. And Zeus smiled. Hades filled their cups and sat back down, and Zeus smiled as he took the drink offered by his brother. They drank all night and talked of days gone by, old memories and reminiscence. They drank and talked until the dawn light brightened the room around them. That night seemed to rejuvenate them both. The judges were brought to work. All souls stripped of form before they are brought to be judged. In the hall of judgment all must come. Humans in the form of light, no physical features or clothes, their souls without body, reflecting all their actions and intent before the eyes of the three. None slipped by to the wrong realms then. Rhadamanthus, Aeacus, and Minos had many famed people come before them for judgment. Tantalus, Sisyphus, Tityos, Titus. But their lives and fates are tales for another time.